3, 2, 1.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Vol Talk podcast. So this is our very first inaugural episode.
Correct.
Of the Vol Talk podcast. It's going to be all about Tennessee volunteer football, baby.
That's right.
That's our favorite topic.
Let's go.
That's our favorite topic. Just once again, my name is Blake. This is my brother Austin. And we're going to be talking Vols with y'all. And so hopefully y'all enjoy it. In general, Austin's going to give kind of most of the color commentary because you're much smarter than me when it comes to football. And so he's going to provide most of the color commentary. I'm going to provide a little bit because I got some hot takes here and there.
Well, you're the historical guy.
I like the history.
Yeah. You'll hit us with some Casey Clausen stats, stuff like that. I
got to hit you with some Casey Clausen.
Yeah, exactly. You'll hit us with a lot of historical stuff. You'll give us a little bit of that
because these kids out here they got to know.
I mean, we got to teach them.
Somebody got to teach them. Somebody got to teach them the history of this program. So I might break out some Casey Clausen love. I might break out some historical stuff. But Austin's got those X's and O's. He's got that football knowledge.
I don't know about X's and O's, but I'll talk about the current team for sure.
Good. So today I think we're just going to preview the season. And basically what the podcast is going to look like is, every week, typically what we'll do is we'll review the
game that just happened.
The previous game.
Correct.
And then we'll preview the game coming up.
Yep.
Right? We'll talk about... And I think the review will try to drop on Sundays.
Yep.
Okay? And then the previews will try to drop on Wednesdays.
Yep.
We're going to aim for around an hour, or maybe a little less, maybe a little over. Just depends on how much we got to say. If we beat Bama again this year...
Yeah, 2022 Alabama game. Expect that podcast to be 3 hours long.
You're looking at a Joe Rogan style, 3 to 4 hours,
Watching the final play 20 times over, crying on the pod.
It might get X-rated, in terms of just like...
He said that, not me.
Okay. We're going to move on. So that's basically what the cadence is going to look like. And it's going to be real chill, real casual, talking about games and upcoming games, talking about the team. And so today, again, we figured we'd just do a high-level overview of the season.
Let's get it.
What are we gonna, what are we hoping for this season? What are the keys to the season? And then we'll kind of go over, some scenarios for the season in terms of win-loss.
Yep.
We'll go through the games. We'll talk about that. Does that sound good?
Yep. Let's
cool.
go.
All right, sweet. Let's go. So, again, we're gonna start with. Let's just kick it off with. Again, the highest level overview of the season. What are kind of your main headlines for the season going into the season?
Okay. Biggest headline, new quarterback.
Yeah.
New quarterback. New hope. I mean, everyone, we've been talking about this guy since he got on campus, before he got on campus. Yeah. Nico. I mean, so everyone's so excited to see him play.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like he's got the talent. It looks like he's got the tools. He was, like you said, second highest rated player ever as far as recruiting goes for Tennessee.
Yep.
So the expectations couldn't be higher.
Yep.
Everyone's really excited to see him play, and really, and I've said this before, the team will go as far as Nico takes it. Yeah. I mean, that's reality. That's the reality of today's football. I mean, the quarterback position is so valuable, and it means so much that Nico's the key. I mean, at the end of the day, if he's great, we'll be great. If he's not as good as we think he's going to be, we're probably going to be pretty average. So that's the number one key is his development, what he's going to look like this year, how is he going to look now that he's the guy. I mean, you're the guy. You're in the SEC. You're at a premier program. How are you going to handle that? It looks like, I mean, from the outside looking in, looking at interviews, looking at how he's looked so far, in the limited times we've seen him, he looks like he can handle it.
Yeah.
But he's still young, man. He's a redshirt freshman.
Redshirt freshman. He, and we see it time and time again, right? Recruiting and the stars and all that, it means something, but it doesn't mean everything, right? Because it's a totally different game when you get to college, right?
Especially in the SEC.
Coming from, and it's a totally different game in the SEC, right? So I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. Real quick, you want to get a pronunciation check on the last name?
Yamalava?
Actually, I think that was pretty close. I think it's like Iyama Leva or Iyama Lava.
That's tough.
It's going to be tough.
That's tough. He's Nico to me.
Yeah, for a dummy like me, those single or double syllables are a little bit easier. So so we're going to go with Nico. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with Nico, right? Put it this way. I mean, look at the national champions of the past 20 years even. Even throughout the BCS era. Did you see any national champions that had bad quarterbacks or bad quarterback play? Now, you saw some teams with, decent quarterback play, right? I mean, you even look at a lot of the Alabama teams, and you didn't have superstars at quarterback, but you had serviceable quarterbacks who got the job done.
Yeah,
right. And so you can't go, like you said, so goes the quarterback, so goes the team.
Exactly. I agree with that, and even it's hard to even compare today's game 10 years ago. I mean, that's like the game has even changed that much since then that even a game manager, like I think a better example, Stetson Bennett from a couple years ago for Georgia, winning back-to-back. Yes, he managed games, and he's more of a game manager, but he also made plays and was the reason sometimes that they moved the ball down the field and scored with his legs or passes downfield. So, and I think especially in Heupel's offense, man, like last year, we ran the ball a lot. I mean, that's been a huge narrative this year is that, oh, look at like everyone thinks Heupel's a passing offense. I don't think that's true. I don't think a lot of people just think that. I think that was maybe was true in like 2021 or 2022. I don't think that's true anymore. If you watched any Tennessee football last year, you know that Heupel ran the ball a lot last year. And a lot of people like to point to that stat. There's a reason he ran the ball a lot last year. There's a reason. I mean, there was a big downgrade going from Hendon Hooker to Joe Milton. Let's just be honest. And
that's more respect to Hendon's Hooker than it is disrespect to Joe.
100%, dude.
I mean, Hendon was just that good.
Exactly. I mean, Hendon is all-time great. So it's not disrespect to Joe Milton, but there was definitely a downgrade. But for Heupel's offense to cook like it did in 22, because let's be real, it didn't cook last year. We weren't. I mean, we scored like 7 points against Missouri. I mean, that's coming off 2022 where we scored 62 against Missouri.
Right.
And Missouri didn't change that much. Let's be real.
No.
So yeah, dude. I mean, in order for this offense to really fire on all cylinders, you need a difference maker at QB. Okay. And what's exciting about Nico is that his ceiling's even higher than Hendon's. I don't think there's any question about that because Hendon, well, I mean, just look at the tools.
Yeah.
I mean, just based on that alone, arm strength, speed, just athleticism. Because I've told you this so many times, dude. Stars out of high school are just based on athleticism.
Sure. How big is he? How fast can he run?
Exactly. That's what it's based on. You're looking at the ball of clay. It's a ball of clay. How can I mold this big ball of clay? And you want the clay to be as fast as possible, as big as possible. And quarterback, it might be a little different. Maybe you're looking a little bit between the ears and see what he can, like the reads he can make and stuff like that. That definitely matters a lot at QB. But the point being is that's what the stars mean. So that means Nico has the athleticism. And we've seen that. I mean, we've already seen that against Iowa. So, it's interesting to know that, okay, Heupel's offense cooked in 2022, but there's even more, I think, that can be got. I really do. I really believe that.
Don't get me too excited too quick, man.
I really believe that, dude. I think there's even more that can be unlocked. Because, I mean, look at it, dude. 2022, look what he was dealing with.
Yeah.
I mean, the scholarship was like, what, 25 players instead of 35 every year. And, there's so many things that he was dealing with, all the transfers out. And what he did with Hendon Hooker, who was a great player, a Tennessee legend, and see what he could do with those guys. I mean, give him a 5-star that can sling the rock. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Nico is still young, right? And so I think we as Vol fans, a lot of times, we try to put the cart before the horse. People calling for Nico to start last year over Joe Milton, things like that. It's like, look, after what we've been through the last decade and a half as Vol fans, I'm okay with doing it the right way.
Yeah. Letting them develop.
Please forgive me for saying this name, but Butch Jones, one of his things was brick by brick, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't really lay a good foundation. He brought in all these recruits, but they didn't have a foundation, right? Heupel, I think we're seeing is laying that foundation, right, and building that program from the foundation up, and so I'm okay with slow rolling it a little bit. I'm okay with letting Nico learn. And so point being is that, okay, he had a year last year, his redshirt year, right? He learned the system, and now he's the guy this year. And don't get me wrong, let's say this too. And we don't have to talk about this too much right now, but these players are getting paid now. Okay? So this guy, he better be putting in the work, right?
Jeez.
But at the end of the day, he's still young and he's still learning, and so I don't think we should expect. I think anything's possible now in a 12-team playoff, but I don't think we should expect Nico to come out and lead us to a national championship immediately.
No, I agree. I mean, like you said, dude, he's still the QB, and there's literally no position in sports where there's more on someone's plate than the quarterback position. You literally have to know what 22 people are doing at all times, and have to read it once the ball snapped. There's so much that goes into playing quarterback, and in the SEC, we haven't seen him in SEC play. He looked great in Iowa, but it was a Citrus Bowl, and it's like, okay, Citrus Bowl is cool and all, but I mean, nobody was there.
Oh yeah, I'll take a bowl win. Yeah, but I'm also not saying that it has going to be anything like
going to Oklahoma in week 4. And we'll get into it, but
Oklahoma's coming up, right?
Exactly.
NC State's coming up in week 2.
That's a good point. I was going to make that point later.
So anyway, but yeah, you're right. It's we haven't seen much.
What we're saying is that we can't get. We got to temper expectations a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Because he's a freshman.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, he's a redshirt, but he's a freshman.
Yeah.
So we can't expect him to come in and just light the league on fire. Because he's playing the damn SEC.
Yeah.
Like, it's SEC, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are. There's a learning curve in the SEC.
You're going to be... and no disrespect to Iowa's defense, but you're playing an Iowa a Big Ten defense in a bowl game.
It's a little bit different.
It's a little bit different than playing an Alabama defense, a Georgia defense.
Yeah.
Even a Texas defense. We're not playing Texas in the regular season, but I mean, it's just different. It's going to be different.
So, I mean, like we said, as this team goes, Nico will go. Like, Nico has to take this team, no
he's
matter what.
The ceiling.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. He's the ceiling and he's the floor. I mean, he's everything, dude. But you also need receivers to throw to.
Right.
So I think that to me is the second key to the year, because there's a lot of new faces at receiver. There's also a lot of guys coming back. Brew's coming back off injury.
Thank goodness.
He's coming back. He's a huge key. He's going to be the leader in the locker room.
Right.
Huge key in the blocking game. He's such a good blocker on the perimeter on screens.
Physical.
He really changes the offense when he's out there. But the new guys coming in is what's interesting to me.
Yeah, so let's talk about so talk through some of the new guys, right? There's a freshman coming in that you want to keep your eyes on, and then there's a transfer coming in that you want to keep your eyes on. A couple transfers, really, right?
Yeah. So the biggest, I think, at receiver, the guy we want to look out for the most this season is Chris Braswell from Tulane.
Okay.
Chris Braswell from Tulane. In my opinion, he could be the most productive receiver in the offense. Because Brew, he's not getting you 100 catches.
Yeah.
Brew's just not there to do that. He might be listed as the X, but he's not dominant as far as getting open all the time.
Right.
That's just not the role he's going to play. I think Chris Braswell could be the guy that consistently gets open, that makes contested catches, and that could end up being the number one receiver in the offense. That I honestly think we desperately need, because as much crap as Tennessee fans give Joe Milton, he wasn't necessarily given the best weapons last year. I mean, look at what Hendon had compared to what Milton had, dude. It was a big difference. And I mean, Brew was out last year. Number one receiver was Squirrel White, he's more of a slot guy who can play on the outside. But I mean, with his size, he's limited.
Sure.
So Joe really wasn't given the best weapons to work with. But you add Chris Braswell for Nico, you bring back Squirrel and Brew, and then the freshman, as you mentioned, Mike Matthews, 5-star freshman. Now, I think a lot of Tennessee fans are really excited about Mike Matthews, as I am. I don't think it's happening this year.
Okay.
I don't think he's playing a lot this year. There's too many guys in front of him. I mean,
because he's a true freshman, right?
True freshman.
Yeah.
He looks really talented, though.
Yeah.
He looks really talented. To me, he looks like DK Metcalf. If anyone follows the NFL,
that's high praise.
Oh, dude, he's huge, and he's not as thick as DK Metcalf, but he's real tall and real fast.
Okay.
Like real fast. So he could be great down the line. I just wouldn't expect him to be great this season. I mean, he's a true freshman. He's probably not going to play a lot this year, in my opinion. So, I mean, Nico needs guys to throw to, and I think the depth is there at receiver, and I think with Chris Braswell, he's the X factor. Like he could change the offense with how much he gets open and contested catches and things like that. So that to me is the number 2 key for the year.
Okay. Now, okay, so and we're looking, and now quick respect to Chris. I think it's Brazel.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it. Brazel, I think.
Yeah.
Brazel. And so Brazel. Hopefully we learn how to pronounce it soon, because hopefully he's going to be the guy, right? Like, because you were telling me that he is projected to be the number 1, which is like when you've got Brew, and Squirrel is a great player in his own right?
Yeah, it's a solid core, dude.
It's a solid core, and I'm just looking. I've got the depth chart over here. So we're looking at Brew and Brazel, and then Squirrel. And then behind them, you've got, again, the Mike Matthews, true freshman. Nimrod is not bad, right? And then you've got that transfer from, was it Oregon, Thornton Jr.?
Yeah, he transferred last year.
Which has, a ton of speed.
Like I said, they got a lot of depth. I think it'll be better than last year, which will be good. So yeah, he's got a lot to work with.
Hopefully Nico's got a slightly softer touch than Joe did.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't help but think, man, that Joe I feel like he just threw too many rockets, man. It's like in terms of those drops.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if you're a receiver in the SEC, if the ball hits your hands, you got to catch it.
You got to make the play.
You got to catch it. But
true.
But yeah, so I think you're right. But so let's talk about O-line now, though, right? Because like you've got the quarterback, so your quarterback is your floor and your ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. So we know Nico, so as Nico goes, so goes the team, right? We've said that, and we've talked about the receivers. The receiving core is there, right? And we've got some good talent, and maybe even some guys who could have breakout years at the receiving core. But now let's talk about the O-line, right? Because as you and I well know, it doesn't matter how good of a quarterback you have, doesn't matter how good of a receiving core you have. If you can't keep the guy protected, 100%. He can't do anything. So what's the O-line looking like?
So I think the key to you just can't have a really bad O-line. If you have a really bad O-line, the offense won't function.
Sure.
The offense cannot function. It can't function in the run game, can't function in the pass game. I think the O-line is got the highest floor out of any position. Maybe outside of defensive line. Defensive line is probably the best position group. But the O-line, it's just a solid group, man. I mean, you're literally bringing 4 guys back from last year that will plug and play, including Cooper Mays, probably the best lineman on the team. And then you bring in left tackle Lance Hurd from LSU.
Huge transfer.
5-star in 2023. Very highly ranked recruit coming out of high school. And the only reason he transferred from LSU, and I don't know how many Tennessee fans know this or follow college football as a whole,
right.
But dude, LSU's got the best tackle tandem in the country. Like they're literally about to have 2 guys drafted in the top 10 of the NFL draft. So there's just no chance for Lance to play. There's literally no chance for him to play. Doesn't mean he wasn't talented.
Right.
Doesn't mean he didn't have the talent. Now, with all that being said, he's a first-year starting left tackle. That's tough. I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's going to be tough. I think he could have some growing pains. I think that's how it is with all offensive linemen. You're not going to see peak of an offensive lineman until about year 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So I think he could struggle, but I mean, he's got the upside. He's got all the upside in the world.
He's got the size. He's got the talent, right? And so there should at least be some sort of floor there, right? Where it's not like he's going to.
I mean, he's a 5-star. That's the floor. He was a 5-star. Now, we've seen plenty of 5-star bust, but again, I would be worried if like a sophomore had beat him out of LSU, or if like there was someone comparable that beat him out at LSU, but that's not what happened. I mean, he's literally behind two. I don't know if they're juniors or seniors, but two guys that are literally projected to be drafted in the top 10.
Top 10.
So it makes complete sense for him to want to get on the field.
Yeah.
Before being a junior, basically.
Especially in today's world, you gotta get that playing time. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I think overall, offensive line is going to be really solid. It could be the strength of the offense.
Okay. In pass game and run game.
Yeah, I don't think it could get worse from last year. There's just no scenario where it gets worse.
Yeah, that's right. Because we got Spraggins coming back too. I mean, you said, what is it, four seniors?
Yeah, four. I don't know if they're all seniors. I think they might be all seniors. But, yeah, I mean, 4 returning guys. I think 3 of them started last year. And so, yeah, the O-line overall is not going to be a question mark on the team. I think it's going to be really good.
So that leaves one position group left on offense, right? We kind of started with the offense. We started with the quarterback, right? And the quarterback's got to have someone to throw to. Quarterback's going to have someone to protect him. But quarterback can't do everything, right? Let's talk about the running backs. We got Sampson returning, right? Mm-hmm. And you were telling me just before we started the pod earlier that there's a guy that we need to maybe learn his name.
Deshaun Bishop. Coach Heupel shouted him out after the scrimmage. Deshaun Bishop is from right here in Knoxville, Carnes High School.
Carnes.
Yep. He was a
down the road from us.
Yeah, he was a freshman last year, 3-star coming out of Carnes. He was really productive at Carnes. I think he won Tennessee Football Player of the Year or something like that for East Tennessee or something like that. He was really good, dude. He was a 3-star again. The stars aren't based on your production in high school, dude. It's based on athleticism. And if he wasn't perceived big enough or fast enough, then he probably got that 3-star rating. But Heupel really really, really likes him.
Yeah.
And he's listed as right now on OurLands.com. Now, I like OurLands. It's not an official depth chart.
Yeah.
But he's listed as the number 2 guy.
The number 2 guy. Okay.
Which is nuts. I mean, number 2 in this offense is basically a starter.
I mean, because it was really by committee, the past couple of years. I mean,
exactly. That's really football in general.
Sure.
I mean, the run game is by committee.
That's how the game has changed.
Exactly. Yeah, so, I mean, he could have a huge role, dude. So I think, again, the backs are not a position group you want to worry about. I don't think there's a lot of question marks there. A lot of depth, a lot of good players. Dylan Sampson is likely going to have a breakout season.
Yeah.
He was really good last year. I could see him being even better this year behind a really good offensive line like we just talked about. So I'm excited on the offense as a whole. I'm excited. I think the question mark is how good is Nico and how good are the receivers going to be? I think those are the 2 questions on offense.
Sure, but I mean, at least from what we've seen of them so far, they're looking pretty solid. And so, I mean, really, it's sounding like we don't have a ton of holes in this offense.
No, I think it's the most depth we've had since Heupel's been here. I think there's no question about that. And he's on fire in recruiting right now, as everyone knows. If you're a Vol fan, he's absolutely on fire. But I do think it's the most depth we've had since he's been on campus, 100%.
And I mean, that excites me, right? Because, I mean, you look at his first year or 2, and it was, I mean, there's all kinds of different things that we can talk about. But one of those things was depth, right? Was the lack of depth. I mean, when you're playing at this level, you have to have depth. I mean, that's why these teams like Alabama and Georgia have been dominant the past however long, because they don't just have 5 these highly recruited players starting. They have them throughout the depth chart. And so that's exciting to that we have a little bit of depth this year, right? But that's the offense. The past few years, maybe we're getting spoiled, but we've gotten accustomed to quality offensive production from Heupel. But the defense, right? As we've seen, you look at Georgia, right? I mean, defense is, as much as the game has evolved and is as important as offense is now, what sets teams apart is still the defense. And so, talk to us about, let's shift gears to the defense, right? So it's looking like the offense is going to be pretty solid. Doesn't look like we have very many holes coming out of the offense. Let's talk about the defense.
Defense is interesting. I think there's one position group that we have no question marks about, defensive line. best position group on the entire team. Obviously headlined by our best player. Maybe our best player. Dude, I mean, James Pierce literally might be our best player since Eric Berry. And that's not
high praise.
Yeah, and that's not an exaggeration. James Pierce is projected right now to be the number 1 overall draft pick in the next upcoming draft. He was ranked number 1 player on ESPN's rankings going into the college football season. He's an absolute animal, dude. He even showed the ability to drop back in coverage against Iowa. He had a pick 6 against Iowa. Yep. He's great at rushing the passer. Can win with power. It's mostly wins with speed though, because he's a little bit smaller. That's kind of his only concern is his size, but he's gonna be dominant, dude. So the question mark is around him, dude, there's so much depth and there's so much experience. Literally, the other 3 starters are all seniors.
That's what I was thinking earlier. When I said the starters were seniors, I was thinking the D-line, not the O-line.
Yeah, so all the starters on the D-line are seniors outside of James Pierce. So, I mean, it's going to be an extremely good defensive line. And James Pierce is going to get a lot of attention this year. He's not flying under the radar like he did last year. So, he's going to get a lot of attention, but I still think he's going to have an incredible season. So, that's by far the best position group in the entire team.
And that's great, that, I mean, to be blessed with a star like James Pierce, right? Because, you and I were talking the other day about, you just mentioned he's going to get a lot of attention this year, right? He might draw some double teams, that kind of thing. But when you've got that in addition to just a really solid line around him, right? Not literally around him, but the rest of the line is solid as well. They're veterans, they're seniors, right? He might draw those double teams, but then you've got guys who are going to be able to step in and produce even when James Pierce doesn't have his best game.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so. I think there's a lot of depth to that position. So that's going to be the strength of the defense. Now, the rest of the defense, a lot of question marks. Linebacker is, I've said this to you privately, but linebacker, to me, has the lowest floor and the highest ceiling and the largest margin of outcome out of any position group. I think they could be great, and I think they could be really bad. So that's
just because it's so unknown. We just don't know what we're going to get out of that
well,
group.
it's 2 new starters. It's Keenan Peely, transfer from last year. He was hurt all last year.
That's right.
So he's starting. He's going to be one of the inside linebackers. And then Arian Carter, who's I think a sophomore. He could be a redshirt freshman. I'm not positive on that. I know it's his second year on campus for sure. He looks athletic. He looks big. But so he has a lot of upside. But again, it's totally unknown. Out of every position group, we have not seen really. I mean, Arian Carter played a little bit last year, but he was in a limited role. He was a freshman last year.
Yeah.
Can't expect a lot out of a freshman. So I think they could be great, and I think they could be bad. I mean, I think that's really the range of outcome for the linebackers.
Yeah, you're right. Carter is a sophomore, and then behind them you've got another sophomore and junior, Talander and Perry, right? And so.
Yeah, a lot of question marks in terms of the depth and just the production that's going to come. But you said there's a lot of upside too.
I think so. I think there's a lot of upside. I think they could be great. We just don't know.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We don't know. I mean, like we hope we we have another Al Wilson on our hands, another Gerard Mayo.
Don't get he likes to get me going with those historical throwbacks, but yeah, I mean, it's in terms of linebackers, it's a key position, especially in today's game, right? You need guys who can drop back in coverage. You need guys who can stop the run, and so it's going to be key. And what you really don't want to happen is the defense revolve around the defensive line, right? As good as the defensive line can be, you don't want it to be solely you know, you need some supporting cast with the D-line, right? And that comes in the secondary a lot of times.
Yeah.
And that's going to be our biggest question mark, right?
Yeah.
I mean, last year, it was the worst position group. I mean, no disrespect, but it was the worst position group. And we had a lot of turnover this year, right?
Yeah, we lost most of our starters through the transfer portal, which, you know, if you're the optimistic Vol, you can say, thank God they're gone. They
Right.
sucked.
That's a good point,
But-
right? Like, that's a good point. I guess if they're that bad.
Yeah,
you know,
if you're thinking the secondary is bad the last couple of years, you're like, sayonara, they're gone, thank goodness. But
Right.
I mean, I don't feel that way. I think I have a lot of question marks about the secondary. The problem is continuity. I
Yeah.
mean, there's no continuity. I mean, none of these guys have played together. Like a couple transfers are playing. We already have a major injury at safety.
Yeah.
I mean, Boo Carter could see a lot of playing time as a freshman. I don't particularly want to see a freshman safety play unless his name's Eric Berry. But I mean, because you can get excited about prospects all you want, man. But there's a lot of question marks.
Well, and it just, especially when you're playing, we keep hitting on this, but especially when you're playing in the SEC, you gotta have experience. You know, you need that experience to. Now, the raw athleticism can be there, right? The talent can be there, the size can be there. That's all great. You need that, especially in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
But that key ingredient is experience. So you're absolutely right. Without continuity, right? Without, you know, they haven't played together, you know, and so it's a huge question mark.
It is a question mark.
It's the scariest one to me.
Let's hope James Pierce can get to the quarterback quick. That's all I'm gonna say. Let's hope James Pierce can get to the quarterback quick, dude.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think they could be okay. See, that's the thing. I 100% believe, and I want to win as many games as possible. I mean, I'm a huge ball fan. That's why we're doing this damn podcast. But to me, the best case scenario for them is solid. That's the best case scenario.
Just solid, like
serviceable. Serviceable, brother.
And that's scary because
Yeah.
you don't want that to be the best case.
Best case scenario.
At least with the linebackers, it's like, hey, they could be really good, you know.
Best
But
case scenario
secondary,
is
we're
a
just not.
hot and ready, brother.
Oh,
It's serviceable.
a hot and ready.
It gets the job done.
It'll fill your stomach, but it ain't.
It's cheap. It'll get the job. It'll fill you up, but that's it.
It's a hot and ready. Is it
Yeah.
good? We didn't say it was good. We said
No.
it was hot. We said it was ready.
Yeah, exactly. We ain't promising good, dude. There's no promises of good.
And that's what we're praying for
Yeah.
is hot and ready with
Yeah.
this secondary, right? This Tennessee secondary. So, but and again, you know, like we were talking about with the quarterback, you know, and Nico, I'm okay with a bit of a slow roll. And we're going to talk more about this in a minute in terms of our, you know, kind of overall predictions for the season, win-loss. But at the end of the day, obviously I want an SEC championship and I want a national championship every year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hell
Just like
yeah.
them baseballs.
I like them baseballs. Shout out to the
Yes, sir.
baseballs. But this year, I know that it may not be the year. I don't think it's the year. And we can talk in a little bit about you know, playoff scenarios, right? I personally feel like playoffs should be.
Oh, they're on the table.
They're on the table.
Oh, they're on the table.
There should be in the conversation.
Oh, yeah. We're
Now,
putting the playoffs back on the table. When we got 12 teams.
12-team playoff.
Oh,
right?
it should be on the table every year.
It should be on the table. But, excuse me, I need to get some water. But, again, I'm not expecting a national championship, right? And so, going back to the secondary, if this secondary can at least get some experience this year, right? And just be solid, just be hot and ready.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I mean, just be hot and ready, just be
I don't
solid.
need a steak dinner.
I don't need a steak dinner this year.
Just cover enough time so James Pierce can get to the damn QB.
Right, just at least, you know, be on them, you
Yeah.
know, don't be 2 or 3 seconds behind.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
So we'll see how that goes. And then special teams, right?
Oh, I don't talk about special teams.
Austin doesn't talk about special.
I don't talk about special teams. On this podcast, you will not get a breakdown from me about special teams.
Now,
I don't talk about it.
Now, this is where the historical guy comes in, right? Because I got to break up the game maxims. You got
I
to
gonna
press.
disrespect my boy General Nealon.
You got to
but-
press the kicking game. That's where the breaks are made.
You know what? I would redo that maximum and just say Don't screw the kicking game up.
Okay, fair
Just
enough.
don't screw it up.
Need I remind you, though, it was special teams that put the nail in the coffin in 2022 against Alabama. That's all I'm saying.
Dude, by the grace of God.
By the
that
grace
kick
of God.
went in.
But I know. Okay, so Austin's he doesn't do special teams. But I think I'll just say in general, special teams have looked good the past couple of years. So
Yeah.
I'm not really.
I think
worried.
our punter's good. I think his name, like Jackson's in his name or something. And I've watched the guy for 4 years.
You're a disrespected punter like
I
that?
watched the guy. I think he wears number 37.
Man, this
I
is
don't know.
disrespectful.
I'm sure.
Look, I'm fine with criticizing players, right? Because you're grown men. Y'all, they can handle criticism. But, man, you're going to disrespect that guy like that?
I'll learn his name eventually. I'll learn his name. I don't want to see
actually,
him.
I was going to say, exactly.
I don't want to see him.
I actually hope.
Keep your ass on the sideline, dude. I don't want to see you this year.
I actually hope that I don't learn his name.
Exactly.
With all due respect, Mr. Punter.
Yes.
But yeah, I think special teams are going to be good enough. I don't think we're going to. I think the question overall, if we want to tie a bow around kind of this position preview, right? To me, and you can tell me what you think. To me, I think it comes down. The question mark comes down to the defense, right? So I don't. In other words, I don't think the special teams are going to be what makes or breaks the team this year. And
Agreed.
I think and as much as you said, and you're absolutely right. Nico is kind of ultimately what it comes down to. But if Nico is good or even great, it still comes back to the defense in terms of at least for me, the big question mark on the season.
I can agree with that. So with all that,
Not saying that again. I think, like you said, you're right. Nico is ultimately the question mark, right, in terms of like how great we can.
but
be.
you're just looking at it from like the perspective that since Heupel's been here, the offense outside of a few games last year has been not a question mark. It's been great.
Exactly.
But what the question has been, sometimes we give up 63 to South Carolina. And that will be the last time I bring that game up on this podcast.
Yeah.
And I regret bringing it up.
Thank you.
We might cut it.
We
could cut it out.
We might have to cut that because that is.
But we don't want that again.
I'm smiling, but I'm crying on the inside.
Exactly.
It's not going to come up again. But yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head there, right? So that's, but I mean that's kind of just a very high level overview of the position groups of offense, defense, no special teams, not on this podcast. And so now let's talk about big picture for the team, right? Because ultimately at the end of the day, offense and defense are on the field at different times, but it's the same team.
Okay.
Right? And so this team, and now we're including coaching staff, right? This Tennessee Volunteer football team is looking at a schedule that is, first of all, a schedule that is different than in years past because of the change of the SEC.
Yep.
But we're also looking at a brand, literally never before seen
12 teams, baby.
12-team playoff, right? So it's blown wide open to me.
Yes, correct.
It's blown wide open.
And a lot of fans probably realize this, but for those who don't, if this had taken the 12-team playoff, if this had been implemented 2 years ago, the Vols would have been in the playoffs. We would have been in the playoffs as like a 6th seed.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's interesting. That, like you said, it opens the door. It opens the door. You don't have to win 11 to 12 games to make it now, to have an opportunity at a national championship. Now you just have to win probably about 10. If you win 10 a year, you're getting in the SEC.
If you're in the SEC.
In the SEC.
You're in the
Correct.
conversation.
I think you're getting in. Like, I think that's, no matter what. I mean, that's just how the SEC looks right now.
Especially now that you've got Texas and Oklahoma. And,
Exactly.
I mean, and this is not an SEC podcast, okay? This is a Tennessee Volunteer podcast, right? So I'm not gonna,
F them.
F
them all.
I'm not going to butter up the SEC. However...
Oh, it's the best conference.
You can't, especially now that Texas and Oklahoma have joined the conference, it already wasn't a question before, right? I mean, outside of the SEC before, at least especially the past 15 years, it was like Ohio State and Michigan is your only real. Clemson every now and then would strike lightning, USC maybe, but at the end of the day, there was no question. But now that Texas and Oklahoma are in the SEC, you're going to have to prove that you're a better conference now, without a doubt, right? And so yeah, I think you're right. Like if you win 10 games in the SEC, you got to be in the conversation, and you're probably in.
Exactly. So that's kind of where we're going. Do we think that's possible this year? Best case, worst case scenario for the year. To me, the best case is 11-1. I do think that's possible. There's a possibility of 11-1. Do I think it's likely? No, but there's a possibility. I think the talent is on the team to go 11-1, and in that scenario, just to go by chalk, you're probably taking the loss to Georgia at Georgia.
Yeah.
In that scenario.
But I mean, in that best case scenario, you're squarely in the playoffs.
Oh, without question. You're in the SEC championship.
Okay.
Because how the SEC championship works, it's the best two teams.
Just the best two teams.
So you're likely in the SEC championship.
So even with a loss to a Georgia,
you're
likely in the SEC championship.
Yeah, and even if you lose to Georgia twice, if you lose to Georgia in the regular season and the SEC championship, you're still getting in. Yeah. It's not like you're going to fly out of the top 11, essentially.
Right.
Because that group of 5 gets an automatic bid. But, yeah, I mean, if you win 11 games, you're without question. Without question.
In the playoffs. Yeah.
Now, I don't think that's likely. I honestly don't. I think 11 is asking a lot.
You think that's the best case scenario.
But I do think it can happen. I think it's in the realm of possibility.
Well, because so let's talk about it, right? You've got Florida at home, and a bad Florida team. Now we're gonna talk more about Florida later. Florida is an anomaly for Tennessee, unfortunately, right? You've got Alabama at home, and Alabama's got a lot of questions. We're not some bumpkin idiot Tennessee fans. We're not going to say that Alabama's bad. I hate them.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say they're bad.
They have a lot of talent.
They've got a lot of talent, but they objectively have a lot of question marks, right? And
exactly.
you've got Alabama at home again. And so I think outside of Georgia, and Georgia is Georgia? No, Georgia's away this year. Georgia is
away
at Georgia.
Even Georgia has question marks.
Even when you've got all of your players getting arrested,
exactly.
Who's going to be playing any given week, right? But yeah, I mean, you've got Florida at home, you've got Alabama at home.
Oklahoma's on the road.
Oklahoma's on the road.
That's
I
tough.
think outside of those 3 games, that's undoubtedly our toughest game, right? Because Oklahoma's on the road, and Oklahoma is obviously a great team. And then, of course, I don't want to overlook NC State either. However, the point is to your point, I think those are winnable situations.
Do you agree? 11-1.
Well,
what's your best case scenario?
We're talking somewhat realistic best case scenarios, right?
We're being optimistic.
Being optimistic, I think you're right. 11-1. I mean, obviously, my pipe dream would be 12-0. You run the table, right? That's not gonna. I'm not. Talking
about scenarios.
Yeah. But
realistic scenario.
Realistic best case scenario is 11-1. I think you're right.
Agree.
I agree, and I think you're right. I think it has to, if you're looking at one loss, it has to be Georgia on the road.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just gonna be tough.
Now,
and hopefully Eric Ainge keeps his mouth shut about Georgia Stadium next time, bro.
Yeah.
Man, I've never heard them fans more loud in 2022, bro.
You're not going to see on this as big of fans as we are. You're not going to see on this podcast trying to give any fodder to any
we ain't giving bulletin board material.
We're not giving bulletin board material.
Ain't doing that.
We're not doing that because we love the Vols.
Leave that to Eric Ainge.
Hopefully not. Hopefully, like you said, he keeps his mouth shut. But yeah, I think you're right. I think 11-1. I think and listen, I think that not only puts us in the playoffs, but I think that puts us in a really great position in the playoffs. I think, I think that gives us an opportunity to make it.
Well, you could be a top 4 seed.
If you could be a top 4 seed
and win an SEC championship, you could be a top 4 seed.
Well, if you win the SEC championship, it's a whole
the
conversation.
But the power conferences get the top 4 bids.
Right.
So if you win your conference and the power conferences, you're top 4.
And let's say this: if momentum is everything, especially in college football, right? And so if you do go into an SEC championship at 11-1 against a Georgia, and you get a rematch against them at a neutral site, anything can happen.
Who knows?
Again, this podcast is not going to provide fodder for other teams, bulletin board material for other teams. I'm not saying Georgia is or that we're a better team than Georgia. I'm just saying anything is possible in college football, right? So I think that's the best case scenario is that we head into the playoffs and top four seed. But let's go completely opposite end of the spectrum.
Worst case.
What's the worst case?
8-4. I don't think there's any lower floor for this team. I've heard people say 7-5. I disagree with those people. If we went 7-5, unfortunately, listen, Heupel's cooking right now in recruiting, but 7-5 would be bad. 7-5 would be bad. You can't admit, or you would have to admit that 7-5 would be the house is on fire.
I think Josh's seat's on fire at least.
I agree. And
That's
nobody, listen, I don't want that right now at the
7-5.
program. There's so much continuity at the program between
Yes.
Rick Barnes, between
Yes.
Tony V, between Josh Heupel, Danny White. Everyone's cooking. Okay, everyone's cooking. I don't want to hear about people being fired right now. I don't.
100%.
I hate to even bring it up. But 8-4, I think, is worst case scenario, and I would give them a pass at 8-4. I really would, because you play in the SEC, and Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, even a Florida, which I'd hate, or NC State. We talked about NC State. I think that's a team that we cannot sleep on. So I think at 8-4, I'd give them a pass, especially with the redshirt freshman at quarterback, and a lot of question marks about the team in general. However, I do think that's worst case scenario. Like, I think that is the absolute floor for the team.
Because we're at 8-4, we're probably not getting in the playoffs.
Oh, without question, we're not getting.
Probably not getting the playoffs unless there's just absolute cannibalism, in the conferences. And so here's the deal, though, man. This might be my BVS, my battered Vols syndrome speaking.
Okay.
But I might be one of those 7-5 guys.
Oh.
I might be one of those 7-5 guys. In terms of a worst case scenario,
who are we losing 5 to?
It's if we drop to NC State because it's
if
a
we lose
neutral.
NC State,
Listen, it's a neutral site.
I hear you.
It's a neutral site, but it's in Charlotte. Okay, that's NC State territory. Okay, so
Okay. Stop.
So really, it's an away game.
Let me say this right now in the pod. We will have more fans in Charlotte, bro.
Okay.
Have you ever met
Okay.
an NC State fan in your life? I haven't. I've never heard of one. Never one.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
Thank you.
When you're right, you're right.
We will have more fans in Charlotte than NC State.
I hope to God we do. Now, myself, speaking for myself, unfortunately, I can't make the trip to Charlotte. I wish I could, but
Well, because we got a podcast to record.
Right. We got more important things to do.
Exactly. Then go to the games. We got a podcast to record.
Now, I hope my fellow ball fans will shout in Charlotte, but just hear me out, okay? NC State is not. They're a good team, man. NC State is a good team.
Yeah. They're a team.
NC State is a good team. I'm sorry, not Charlotte. Oklahoma is a good team.
We can lose Oklahoma.
And we're on the road.
That's likely a loss.
Yeah, we're on the road to Oklahoma.
But, let me tell you, no one's going to want to win that more than Josh Heupel.
He's going
to be fired the hell up.
And honestly, that's what I hope carries us through that game.
Exactly.
Because it's going to be a tough game, but I hope he gives the greatest pregame speech of his life, gets those boys fired up, right? But again, we're talking worst case scenario,
Yes.
Oklahoma. And then you're looking, obviously you're going to include Georgia in that, and obviously, unfortunately, you're going to have to include Alabama in that. And then we got to talk about it, bro. Florida.
Yep.
Florida is in, and listen, we're establishing a lot of themes for this podcast, right? One theme is that we're going to try not to disrespect. We're not going to try to get out of line with disrespect. However, I will lay plenty of disrespect on the Florida Gators. I
Get out of line with disrespect.
I don't.
But you draw the line at Florida. You are going to cross that line with Florida.
I am going to cross that line with Florida because I do not like Florida. I don't like the state. I don't like the team. I don't like the university. I don't like the mascot. There's nothing about Florida that I respect.
But something about Florida.
But unfortunately, so here's me bringing it back, right? Because I'm going to give a little bit of respect where it's unfortunately due. Is that for whatever reason
They've owned us. Let's just be real.
We play our worst football.
Yeah.
Against Florida
For whatever reason.
and they play their best. I mean, you were just telling me about.
So,
walk us through last year with the Florida Gators. Right?
Last year Florida was terrible, but I'll even take it back further than that. Florida's worst season in history, they went 4-8. They went 4-8 that season. One of their wins was against our Vols.
Yeah.
They literally have a clip in that year. Okay, I think they're playing like Georgia State. They're playing a team in Georgia that's not Georgia. Okay, so I should tell you all you need.
So that's all you need.
That's
to know.
all you need to know. It's a team in Georgia that's not Georgia, so
Yeah.
they're not good.
Savannah State.
They literally gave up like 500 yards rushing in that game. They have a clip. I believe it's in that game. It's definitely from that season where they have two players that are both on Florida blocking each other.
Two Florida players blocking.
They're
one
literally
another.
blocking each other, and it's not by accident. Where
They drew it up that way.
They literally
drew it up that way.
They literally. Well, no, they think when I say it's not by accident, I mean they think that's their guy.
Yeah,
they think that's
the
their
assignment.
guy. That's
Yeah.
the assignment, dude.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not. No, we didn't draw it up that way. You gotta block the other team. They blocking each other, dude. It's unbelievable. That's how bad they were.
Yeah,
and we lost to them.
And that just goes to show that again, it's that monkey on the back. We
Exactly.
To me, like we kind of knocked him off our shoulders, but he's still like hanging on.
Well, yeah,
This
that's
monkey
we
on our
knocked
back.
them off our shoulders in 22, but like you said, they're still hanging on like that because in 23, there was literally. Let me tell you something, dude. Nothing will tell the truth more in football than the Vegas spread. Vegas ain't looking to. There's no bias in Vegas, bro. They're looking to make money, and that's
Right.
it. That's all they're looking for. They're
Yeah.
looking for a bag. So when we come out as 11-point favorites last year against Florida, that tells you all you need to know. The talent gap was massive. The coaching gap was massive. But somehow, some way, we still crapped the bed.
Yeah.
So we can never chalk them up to a win.
Exactly. Unfortunately, right now, I would listen. The state of the Florida program right now, I would love again, and this is where the disrespect is going to come. Okay, so if you like Florida, unfortunately,
don't watch this.
You're in the wrong place, right? But I hope that they experience 15 years or more of what we just experienced, and they're in, or worse,
Okay.
or worse, and for longer, and they're in that position right now. They're in
yeah.
that position. Like it's the program is not in a good spot.
No.
Billy Napier,
Ain't it?
he's not the guy.
I mean, we want him on a lifetime deal.
I would love for you to sign him to a
Yeah.
lifetime contract. You know,
Yes.
I
But
mean,
he
kind
ain't.
of just like we're gonna throw it over to basketball real quick. Just like Kentucky signed up Calipari for a lifetime contract, and now Rick Barnes gets to be his daddy for the rest of his life.
Well, he gone now.
Well, he is,
Yeah.
But, or I'm saying, yeah,
But he did sign a lifetime contract.
He signed a lifetime contract, and Rick Barnes owned him. My point is
Correct.
I would love Billy Napier to
Be there as long as possible.
Be there as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right, coming from a Tennessee fan, so that goes to show you that it's not a good, it's not in
No.
a good state right now. But unfortunately, it can never be
Yeah.
an automatic.
Exactly.
done.
If you're a Vol fan, dude, you can never just say, okay, Florida doesn't win.
Yeah.
You can never just say that. Even though, if you look on paper, oh, dude, it should be a 2-touchdown.
Oh, it should be an easy one.
It should be an easy one.
should-
We
it
are
should-
so much more talented than Florida, and it shouldn't be a question. But unfortunately, it is.
In fact, I want Heupel to run up the score. I mean,
Oh, I would love to beat them 70-0.
I mean, that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I think just
7-5. You think?
I'm not saying I
7-5?
think it's going to happen. I think that's the worst case scenario.
I disagree, man. I just don't think there's too much talent on this team to go 7-5, man.
I
outside of
tend
the
to. I
normal-
agree with you, but I mean, it's just unfortunately maybe it's BVS. Okay, maybe it's bad.
Oh, it's definitely BVS because outside of Georgia and Alabama, the normal teams on the schedule, it's a relatively easy SEC schedule. I hate to say it that way, but when you put Vanderbilt on the schedule, you put Arkansas on the schedule, you put Mississippi State on the schedule, those are three worst SEC teams. I mean, those are literally the three worst SEC teams, and we get to play them all this year. So there's really no unless NC State again. I don't think the team. It doesn't matter if we sleep on them because we have nothing to do with the outcome of the game. But the team better not sleep on them because NC State can play. But even NC State, that's not the worst out of conference opponent in my opinion. So I think 7-5 would be a disaster, dude. I think that would absolutely
it would be a
disaster.
disaster. It would be a disaster.
But
let's talk about
what we think are going to happen.
So that's best case. That's
Yes.
worst case scenario. Still somewhat realistic, right? Like if we don't think we're going to go 4-8, we don't think we're going to go 12-0, right?
Yep.
But let's talk about realistically. If you look at the schedule and you go game by game, what do you think the most realistic expectation is?
Okay. So I think, and I'll just say this is a prerequisite because this applies to everything in football. We're not talking injuries. Like this excludes injuries. Like if bad injury happens, then that could.
I mean,
we'll
that's-
exclude that.
Yeah.
But as far as what I think's going to happen, excluding injuries, I think 10-2. I think 10-2 is going to happen.
Okay.
I think Georgia is going to be a loss. I think that's. I think it's obvious. It's unfortunate, but it's obvious. Like that's an easy one to pick out. And then the other loss, I think, is probably going to be Oklahoma. It's a lot to ask out of Nico to literally have his first SEC game in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really tough. Although I think if Heupel can somehow motivate his players as much as he'll be motivated for that game, and who knows, maybe he'll call the best game of his life. Dude, if we win that game, the momentum is going to be crazy for the season.
100%.
Likely we'll go into the Alabama week undefeated.
And that's exactly the kind of momentum you want going into
Well, it's exactly what helped us with 2020 and 2022.
2022, yeah.
What's comparable between this season and 2022 season was in 2022, LSU is this year's Oklahoma.
Okay.
Going into Death Valley and beating LSU in 2022 gave us so much momentum
100%.
going in and leading into the Alabama game eventually. So if we beat Oklahoma, that's the kind of momentum we'll be looking at. But I do think if I just had to look at the big picture, I think Oklahoma's a loss, and I think Georgia's a loss. I do think we're going to beat Alabama this year. I really do.
I love to hear that. I'm going to stick with the theme of being a little bit more pessimistic, and I think 9-3. I think 9-3 is what we're looking at.
9-3, bro. We just had zero subscribers unsubscribe.
I know. All zero times zero equals zero. Look, so I think you're right. I think Georgia obviously is the most obvious one. Unfortunately,
Georgia, your time's coming though. Don't worry. Your time's coming, Georgia. Your time's coming. All right.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely right. I mean, listen, and no disrespect to what Kirby's done, right? But Georgia, you're relevant for the first time ever.
Yeah.
I mean, and celebrate it.
Congrats.
That's great. Congrats. That's great.
But let's not forget, 2 years ago, last time you won anything was 1980,
and it was a one-off. I mean, so let's not, first time being relevant, right? So Georgia, your time is coming. But Georgia, this year, talent, it's just the depth, whatever. I think you're right. Oklahoma, I think it's going to be too tough on the road. It's early in the season.
We've struggled on the road, man.
We've struggled. Heupel has struggled on the road.
Now the headsets might help that.
I hope so. I really hope so. But we've struggled on the road, and it's early, and it's early in the season too, right? I think this team, because of that, youth in some areas, I think is going to take time, just to really gel. And then unfortunately that third loss, I'm not going to say it's going to be Alabama because that hurts me to my core. But I think it's going to be. I think we're unfortunately going to drop one that we shouldn't, either against an Alabama or against call it a pick one between Bama, NC State, or Florida.
In fairness, you say we shouldn't drop. I mean, we're going to be underdogs to Alabama.
No,
so
we're going to be
drop
underdogs.
That game, then it's
no. Well, yes. What I mean is that it's either going to be that third loss. In my opinion, is either going to be Bama or one that we shouldn't drop.
Yeah,
I think is
because we'll be favored against. The Oklahoma game is going to be interesting. It's really going to depend on how both teams look going into that game.
Right.
I think we're going to be underdogs in that game, and we're obviously going to be underdogs against Georgia and Alabama. I mean, everything else, though, we should be favored against every other team.
Yeah.
No question.
Well, so 9-3, 10-2, right? I mean, that's somewhere in that range, I think. And honestly, I think that's a good growth spot, right? It's a good stepping stone. And at 10-2,
we're in the playoffs.
We're in the playoffs.
We're in the playoffs.
Possibly 9-3, possibly depending on.
Yeah, I agree.
Depending on the losses, right? Depending on how what the margin of loss is, things like that.
I think last year's LSU team at 9-3 would have made the playoffs.
Sure. I mean, yeah, because they ended up in the top 10, didn't they? Or
they were close. I think they might have been like 12th or something like that. But I think they would have made the playoffs.
Point is it's in that conversation. So yeah, so I think that's a great stepping stone. Is 9-3 or 10-2. I'd love 10-2. I think that shows a lot of growth for the team and gets me super excited for the next year. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? So that is our honest to God, kind of breakdown of the position groups. That's our breakdown of kind of the keys to the season. Yep. That's our breakdown, high level overview of the season, kind of worst case, best case, and realistic case of the season. So now let's wrap it up with just a quick, couple minute preview of week 1, Chattanooga, coming up next week, next Saturday. literally right at about 7 days from now, right? So it's going to set the tone for the season. What do you? We hope to God it's a W, right? But what do you hope to see coming out of the Chattanooga game?
I mean, it'll be a W. Obviously, if it's not a W, then everything's burning. But, I mean, so, like, it's going to be a W. What I'm looking for is Nico's growth. How does he lead the offense? Does he look good? I mean, I want to see the offense score without hesitation. They just move down the field.
On demand
just
touchdowns.
Move down the field.
Yeah.
And I want to see the secondary not give up like 300 yards passing to Chattanooga.
Okay.
Like I just want to see the team look good. Now it's the first game. I mean, it's the first game, so the expectations can't be, they're not going to be as good now as they will be later in the season. But I just want a chill. Because we don't get a lot of chill UT games. So I just want a chill Saturday where I get to see us beat Chattanooga's ass. Let's be real. And I think a good score at halftime, 28, 35 points to like 3, somewhere around there, 0 to 3 points. Somewhere in that range. Now, I mentioned to you that I want to see the starters come back out in the second half. I think that'll be really important because halftime adjustments are incredibly important. So just to get used to that, come back out of halftime, stay loose, stay ready, and just execute, man. Just go get a win, start the season off strong, and let's get it done.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of what you're saying is like it's going to be some early indicators on those question marks that we do have, right? Like let's come out and let's see how Nico is going to play, right? Again, it's Chattanooga, but let's set the tone. That secondary, please don't give up 300 yards coming out against Chattanooga.
Oh yeah, if Chattanooga starts moving the ball, dude.
Like let's, I mean, I think we need to hold them to 6 points or less. I mean,
6 points or less.
Chattanooga.
So if they score 7, you're like done. You're just like fire Tim Banks. James Pierce, get him out of here.
I mean, it's Chattanooga, I mean, no, I would like to be at 6 points or less, and I would like to go into halftime. Honestly, I'd like to go into halftime 31-0.
Yeah.
I mean, and I agree with you. Like, let's start the second half with the starters to get them that, kind of second half reps. Because we don't want to come out flat in the second half during the season, but I don't want to see him for very long in the second half.
No.
I don't want to see him for very long in the second half. So.
Like, if we don't see Gaston Moore in this game, then it didn't go well.
Right.
I want to see Gaston Moore play.
Because at the end of the day, we were talking about depth, right? And we need to get some reps for our depth,
Yeah, and it's not just about that, too. It's also just about, like, if Nico's playing in a fourth quarter, bro.
That's not going to be.
Oh, jeez. No, we don't want to see that.
Because at the end of the day, it's just going back to what we said a second ago, which is setting the tone, right, for those those question marks, those kind of big season, kind of.
Dude, at the end of the day, we're ranked number 15 right now.
Yeah.
The AP poll has ranked us number 15. Okay, so that puts us 2 or 3 spots out of a playoff spot. So play like the number 15th team. Like, play like that.
Like you're trying to get into the 12.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, exactly. You can't drop a game like this. So just look good. And let's see how Nico grows. It's more Nico reps, dude. That's exciting.
Yeah.
He's literally the best quarterback prospect we've had since, who? Peyton?
I guess so.
I mean, geez. Like, he's like, as
I
far as.
got to shout out Casey Clausen.
He might have been good. I don't know how.
But you're right, prospect.
Yeah. I don't know what Casey Clausen's rankings was.
Like
coming out
24/7. The point is Nico. Like everyone's frothing at the mouth. Like we want Nico to be that guy.
So we get to see him more. That's fun. Yeah. In literally 1 week. Let's go, baby. Let's go, baby.
So y'all, that's our preseason kind of week 0 preview of the Tennessee football Volunteers.
Let's go
season. We're looking forward to it, y'all. We love the Vols, and listen, we love just because we're starting the podcast now doesn't mean that we weren't Vol fans 7 years ago, 10 years ago in the depths of the stuff that
we're like the Browns of college football, bro. like if you're still a Browns fan after the crap they went through, that's like the Vols. If you're still a Vol fan after the crap they went through over the last 10 years,
then obviously
you're a fan.
So
You're
we
a
love the
fan.
Vols. We can't wait to see this season with y'all. We hope it's a fun journey in terms of the wins and losses, but also with this podcast. Again, this is our very first episode. My name's Blake. That's Austin.
Vol Talk,
our
baby.
very first episode of Vol Talk. So we hope y'all enjoyed it, and we can't wait to catch up with y'all in the next week. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Gonna have to drop the
Yeah.
next time. Drop that.